Hey, what's up, Kareem? Good to see you. Thanks for jumping into the stream. I'm getting ready to start drawing. I'm just announcing on my YouTube that, on my Instagram that I'm about to stream, so hang tight for just a minute and I'll start drawing here. All right. All right, cool. Here we go. So I'm going to just do a really short, maybe 15-minute demonstration on how I think about volume in figure drawing. So I've been talking with some of my students about this, and so I thought I would make a short video and share with the rest of my subscribers on YouTube. So here we go. We've got our photo reference right here. And the first thing I want to do, and I screw this up all the time, is I want to plan how big I want this on my page. I'm one of those artists who will start drawing, I'll love what I'm doing, and by the time it's time to draw the feet, they're not going to fit on the page. So I'm just going to do a basic measure and see how many times the head goes into the body. So just to make sure I get the head the right size. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it's about 6 heads here. So I can just figure out 1/6 of this distance right here, and that's how big I want to draw the head. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A little bit bigger. 3, 4, 5. That's close enough. So probably I'll make it a little bit bigger. So that's about how big I want the head. So this is currently my favorite way to start. I'm probably going to back this up over to this side because I want room for this arm as well. So here we go. So the first thing I'm thinking about, the most important part of this, the essential angles, right? Okay, now that I have 3 parts of the head planned, I've got the chin, the top of the head, and the angle for the face. Now it's where I need to measure and figure out the width of the head in relationship to the length of the head. So it's about 1 to 1.5, right? 1 to 1.5. So something like this. It just doesn't take much to get that measured. And so why not just go ahead and do it? Because I can tell you this. Having to fix your drawing is a lot more work than having to just get it right in the first place. When I step back and realize, ooh, I have to fix all these parts of my drawing, I just hate doing that, and it feels like I'd rather have just spent the time getting it right in the first place. I'm going to remeasure him. I feel like this head is pretty big. So let's see. And I'm thinking about from here down to the bottom of the page. Okay, yeah, it's gonna go a little bit lower than that. So I'll just raise this up a little bit so that it'll all fit. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to think gesture. But, and in order to get the gesture correct, it's all about angles. So I'm allowing myself to find these angles and see not just the angle, but also where they would intersect on the head. Like, should the chest be here or over here? Well, to figure that out, I find the angle and see where it intersects in the head. It's something like this. And I'm really going to let myself just bring this line up farther in order to make sure I'm getting that angle correct. I can always just erase that. In fact, I don't have an eraser. Let me go get one. All right. So now I need to think about, where is the hip going to go? That's another essential part of this pose. I'm going to try to place the anterior superior iliac spine. If you don't know what that is, you should check out my Patreon and I'll teach you anatomy for the artist. Okay, and how far down is this pelvis going to go? Well, let's just measure with heads again. 1, 2, 3, about 3 1/3 down to the base. About down to here. So this is about where that pelvis is going to come to, right here. And we know how far out it's going to go because I just measured. And so it'll be something like this. And at this stage, when you step back, you should really start to see the pose coming together. You know, it's these angles. It's getting these angles placed correctly where the life of the pose starts emerging. Okay, now how far back do we place the shoulder blade? Well, same thing, angle and distance from the head. And I'm finding a very simple line right here, and I'm keeping it nice and broad because I'm not 100% sure about it. So, keeping it loose and broad. All right, so next thing, general shape of the shoulder. Just like this. And when I think about the shoulder of a complex part of the anatomy, I mean, really what I'm just thinking about is, what shapes do I see? And a knowledge of anatomy is really helpful for this, of course, but you don't need it. You know, learning to draw from observation is far more important. So, for example, I'm going to allow myself to reduce the complex anatomy of the neck into just a simple cylinder. Don't let it get any more complicated than that. Okay, around how big should the shoulder be? It's about half the length of the head. Maybe something like this. So just a quick investigation using reference points, and you should be able to find the answers. You do not have to guess. If you ever find yourself guessing, slow down, take a break, and figure out how you can find the information. You can find it, I promise you. Here I'm trying to place the inside of the pelvis. or the right side. And it's going to intersect the head right about here. So I know this is where the small of the back is going to come. I just found it using a plumb line, right? Then I need to use an angle here to connect it like this, keeping these lines loose because I will be modifying them. Okay, angle for the leg. Just to complete the pose, I'm going to really keep it loose. Okay, and I remember the foot's going to come down a little bit lower because I drew the head a little bit too big. So it'll come down to about there. The toes will emerge just beyond this point right here. So using a simple plumb line, I can place that correctly, right? Don't have to guess. This stuff is information that you can find. Okay, now for this other leg. Okay, so the theme of finding volume. Before you think about the complex anatomical shapes, we're just thinking about the simple shapes. So here, this leg is just going to become a cylinder. How far down is this cylinder going to go? Let's see. I'll measure from the standing foot to the knee. And it's going to go about to here. So about here. And it's going to overlap here. You can see that the contour of this knee comes out a little bit farther than the contour of this one. I'm just going to check my angle to make sure this is correct. Yep, feels good. Okay. And now, not going to allow myself to overcomplicate this. It is just a cylinder. Here we go. See the top of the cylinder? Bring it down. Here's the bottom of the cylinder. No more complex than a roll of paper towels. Right? Can you all see that? Maybe I darken it a little bit more. Okay, but I am going to sophisticate it beyond just a simple cylinder like this. So I want to find the angle for this. We've already created the mark here. And then the angle, I'm just going to bring it on out nice and gesturally. And I can step back, and am I seeing the pose coming together? I like the way it's coming together. How far out does the heel go? So do I put it here? Do I put it over here? How do I know? I use a plumb line. And bring the line up, and I see that it's about this distance out from the shoulder. I'm kind of eyeballing it. You can definitely take the time to measure all of this stuff. But I don't want this to be a 3-hour video. I want it to be a 15-minute video or 20-minute. So I'm going to just do some very quick loose measuring. All right, next up, let's find the basic cylinder of the lower leg. I'm going to allow myself to reduce the cylinder here, or reduce the lower leg to just a cylinder, finding the two ellipses, allowing the cylinder to get fat here into the calf muscle, and then taper it back in to this thin point where the lower leg intersects with the ankle. So keeping it as simple as possible for as long as possible. Okay, I can step back and ask myself, is this feeling correct yet? I think this foot is a little sloppily drawn. So when you're doing feet, if you're not gonna, the anatomy of the feet, very, very complex. Which is why I just say squint and pretend like it's just a shape and just try to copy the shape, just like that. Allowing the cylinder to overlap it in a case like this. And by just finding one volume, placing it over another, allowing them to overlap, you'll end up with a pretty sophisticated drawing. You don't need anatomy, not yet. Once you master, well, or once you get good enough at observational drawing, you'll probably already be pretty good at anatomy because you're just good at observing what's happening on the figure in front of you. Okay, so this arm, yeah, let's get this one in. I just want to find the basic angle relationship between the wrist and the shoulder. It's going to come up something like this. I want to know how far out it's going to go. So I'll measure in heads. So let's see, 1 head, 2, a little under 3. So 1, 2, a little under 3, it's going to come to about here. So this is about where the wrist is. We can just very loosely connect all this. And then we'll see how big should I draw the hand. I'll compare the width of the hand from the joint to the end of the index finger. And it's a little bit wider than the head because there's foreshortening. So it's going to come to here. Something like that. So it's at this point that I step back and ask myself, is it looking correct? I'm letting my eye dart back and forth between the photo reference and the drawing. Okay, we've got a question from Karen. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but yeah, go ahead and ask your question. I'm going to keep drawing in the meantime. So the lower arm here, same thing. I'm going to treat this just like a basic cylinder. And I'm going to augment it ever so slightly. So it's just a cylinder. It gets a little wider down here. And hangs right there. So that's it. Not going to allow it to be overly complex. And we can add nuancing and we can add more details that bring out the anatomy later. But if we miss the big picture, then all that stuff is useless. All right, here's the question. Karam asks, how do you incorporate small details like fingers and toes in full body drawing without it taking all of the attention from the large, broad strokes of bigger parts of the body? That's such a good question. Thank you so much for that question. What I do, it depends on the kind of drawing I want to make. So if I want to go really, really detailed, I can do that, but really what I want to do is draw this hand until it feels like a hand at rest. And so for example, I'm going to let myself separate these 3 fingers from this index finger here. And once these are separated, I'll step back and I might say that that's enough. Maybe I want to show the plane shift right here. But you can see that the detail here is already starting to take away from the rest of the drawing. So just develop the whole story at the same time. Step back and ask yourself what needs to be done. I mean, it's a great question, but it's also just an experience thing. You know, it's going to take ruining a lot of drawings before you start to get a feel for where to add detail and where not to. One of the best things that you can do for that is to collect all your favorite examples from all your favorite figure drawers, whether that be on Instagram or on YouTube or just Google Images or whatever. And that way, whenever you are asking yourself, how much detail do I want to go into, you can consult your inspiration folder. So, good question. Okay, I feel like I'm forgetting something here. You cannot see the far arm, it's totally concealed. I guess maybe I should add this staff, huh? It sort of makes the pose make sense. So here I'm gonna mark where the staff is gonna begin. And the staff should come through here. Okay, and I'm just gonna try to connect these with, this is where I always mess up. It's just drawing this straight line here. Okay, that should start to read a little bit nicer. We've got a staff there. Okay, now I want to get a little more going on in the face here, or in the head, and in keeping with the entire big picture here, I don't want to start drawing an eye right now. That would make this look terrible. We got to go from big picture to little picture. So I need the plane shift right here, the plane shift from the forehead across this brow ridge. And the nose is actually not very prominent. So we're just starting to find a bit of the silhouette there. Not liking this forehead. I want to bring this in a little bit more. Something like that. And then I want to find the underside of the nose too. Major planes, that's what I'm thinking about. And if you want, you can get this beard in. The ear is going to sit behind the jaw. Ears are, it may seem like that's too much detail for this stage in the drawing. The reason why I like to get the ears in earlier is because the orientation of the ear shows us the orientation of the back of the jaw. And the back of the jaw is a very important part of the anatomy to get. Okay, so here we've got the major shapes here that construct the shoulder coming down into this latissimus dorsi. Once again, if you want to know what that is, and you know, you can check out my Patreon and I'll teach you anatomy for the artist. Or if you don't want to do that, just get better at drawing from observation. And the anatomy will come out all on its own. Noticing how these volumes overlap each other, right? I think I went a little bit too dark there. I want to be a little more subtle. Learning to use the side of your charcoal to get a nice gentle line. This. Now, the volume of the pectoral muscle here, overlapping the other one. So we're just finding these overlapping volumes, and when you step back, the anatomy will start to emerge all by itself. Moving from a complex shape to a simple shape here. And the musculature begins to come out all on its own. I want to start a video series called Drawing is Easy. Just finding volumes and overlapping them correctly. And you can draw anything. So we've got this volume for the lower leg. How are we going to sophisticate this? Well, we look at the volumes and how they overlap, right? So I'll soften that up. And notice how the cylinder is wide here, but then you've got this part of the cylinder that pushes out and then comes back in like this. All we did is observe how the cylinder has a piece, one volume within it that overlaps another. And we have drawn these two different muscle groups. This is the quadricep group and this is the adductor group. You don't need to know that though if you just draw overlapping volumes. Okay, then here we've got this cylinder pushing out back here, back in, and this quadricep group wraps around, pushes out, and then gets kind of curves in like that. And here what we've drawn is the gluteus maximus and medius, and the quadricep group coming down here, and how we've observed that this pushes out into the belly of this muscle here, and it sort of gets a little more taut down in here. We're drawing this tendon. So it's all just volumes. You get them drawn correctly and you're drawing anatomy like a pro. Drawing is easy. Or at least that's what I'm going to call this series. Okay, so pushing this out, bringing this in. All we're doing is slowly sophisticating the way these volumes interact with one another. Notice how this is one simple cylinder, but when we come down here, we've got this shape emerging. We know that that's an ankle, but really we're just saying, hey, this cylinder gets a little more geometric down here. We're getting this edge. This is why if you want to get really good at drawing anything, you just learn how to draw simple shapes and how to augment them. And that's it. Okay, let's get this load-bearing leg drawn in. So this, from this point here, pushes out, comes back in, and then same thing here. Basic cylinder, how is it interacting with the volume of the foot? Well, we let it overlap. How wide should it be? I'll make a simple mark, step back. Does that feel wide enough? Feels okay to me. And then we can push it back out. How do you draw the anatomy of the feet? That just doesn't matter. Forget about that. Squint or let your eye drift out of focus and just copy this simple shape. And if you do that, it should read. And then if you want, you can add another volume on top. Okay, so next, if you want, you can begin to look for the next important plane shift here. This is just this shape right here. It's in shadow, right? Not hard to see if you just allow yourself to simplify it to just a shape. Don't overcomplicate. The biggest difference between the student and the pro: the students overcomplicate, the pros see things simply. Okay, let's add a little more sophistication to this lower arm here. I know it's higher, but I call it the lower arm because the upper arm from the shoulder to the elbow, lower arm from the elbow to the wrist. Allowing myself to really simplify. I mean, you don't see this line here, but I really want to just exaggerate. These are two simple volumes. Okay, so instead of a basic cylinder here, the ellipse illustrating the end of the cylinder here, I'm going to allow myself to sophisticate it ever so slightly. There we go. And just this slight sophistication, not a lot. I'm not talking about what this muscle is, what this muscle is, what this bone is. We're just observing the way these volumes overlap one another. And this drawing should start to come to life. Just some simple augmentation here and there to find these shapes a little more accurately. And I think this is pretty good. I think we've accomplished what we set out to do here. How long has this stream been going? Okay, yeah, it's been a 35-minute stream, so this has definitely been as long as I wanted to go. Maybe I'll cut this up into 2 episodes for YouTube. But this is a basic intro to how I use simplified volumes to find complex anatomy, and how I don't let myself get bogged down in the details or in this endless need to research and understand human anatomy. It's just volumes. So, thank you all for joining. This has been a lot of fun. I hope it's been helpful. I will catch you all on the next video. For those watching later on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments what you liked about it and what kind of video you want to see next. All right, have a good one. Peace.